What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Cranking with Christian. Today we are going to be talking about bass boat gel coat restoration. For this specific video, I'm going to be using, as you guys see right here, the Pro-Tec Boat Auto RV Care Kit. This is actually the Pro-Tec Boat Restoration Kit. It comes with a bunch of stuff. Over here, where you guys can probably see where I'm pointing, there is a sealant polish, there's a wash and gloss, Mighty Tough Cleaner Degreaser, water spot remover, new paint moisturizer, wet sandpaper, etc. So that is exactly what we'll be using for this video. But anyways, I'm going to be going through with all the steps. It's going to be whether you have this kit or not. These steps are going to work. In replacement of the steps, you guys can go through and go get your own wet sandpaper. You guys can go through, get your own heavy cut compound, buffing pads, all that. One thing you guys will need that's not in that kit, you will need soap, water, of course, a bucket. Then you will also need a cotton buffing pad for your buffer. Well, it's really a wool buffing pad, but I call it a cotton because it's got the cotton loops on it. But anyways, that's what we're going to be using. I'm going to go through step by step, but right here is the exact spot we're going to be working on. As you guys can kind of see over here, it's sparkling, and you get down here and it is heavily oxidized. So it is fairly bad right there. We may be pulling this off right here to be able to do this, but this is the plan. We are going to be attacking this today, trying to get this to look better. Most of the other trim around the area is fairly clean or fairly shiny other than just needing cleaned. So we're not going to mess with that much, but this is the specific area we will be looking at. So I'm going to take a before picture for this, and then we're going to get to going. I'm going to show you step by step what to do, and then we'll do an after picture and we will compare. To start off the initial process, I went ahead and I pulled off this trim piece that was right here, just so I don't get it all dirty and with compound and all that, or wet sand or whatever, the gel coat residue. But anyways, what we'll need is some sandpaper. I've got some in the kit, but this is actually heavier duty sandpaper. This is heavily oxidized down here, and what I found out from the rest of the boat I've already done is this heavily oxidized gel coat. 1000 grit does not cut it. You sit there and you are wet sanding forever getting it. I had about 20 hours invested until I went down to 50 or 500 grit sandpaper, 600 grit actually, and then that's when I started to notice a difference, is at the 600 grit. So yeah, that's what I'm going to be starting right here. This is wet or dry 500 grit. Some people are probably going to complain, say, whoa, that's way too heavy or whatnot. You don't have to worry about it. I've done the rest of the boat with 500 grit so far, and it looks a lot better, and I like how it came out with 500 grit. So we're going to be starting with 500 grit. From there, we'll go to 1000 grit. We'll go then to 1500 grit, and then 2000 grit. So we're going to start off with this. Initially, what you guys want to do is you want to take a sponge, get it all soapy, wet, and just wash down the surface you are going to be wet sanding. As you guys can see underneath where this panel was, it is really shiny already, and that's basically what we are going to be trying to match with the rest of the process we're doing. So we're just going to wipe this down for now, and after you have that on it, you just want to go make sure it's plenty wet and soapy enough. Your carpet's going to get wet, it's not a big deal, it'll dry out, but when it's plenty wet and soapy enough, you're going to go through with your sandpaper. I always get mine a little bit wet, and then you are just going to start going side to side. The one specific type of sanding to focus on with this process is straight line sanding. So when I went down the side gunnels, I went straight from the front to the back of the boat. You just do straight lines, and that's what you want to do. So we're just going to go back and forth and just straight line sand this entire area. As you guys can see, there's some dirty water coming off of it. As we get closer to being done wet sanding, you'll see it white, a white film instead of this dirty brown film come off of the gel coat, and that's when you know you're far enough and you can keep on going. So I'm going to set the camera down, going to get to buffing or else wet sanding, and then I'll see you guys here in a minute. The first wet sanding is done. You guys can now see it has some glare to it. It looks a little bit better. So basically, after we were done wet sanding, we just took the sponge, wiped everything off, again, just to get all that crud off of it. And then now we are going to go through with the next sandpaper, which is 1,000, then the exact same process with the 1,500, and then the 2,000. So I'm going to set the camera down, get all the wet sanding done now, since you guys know the steps to do, and then I will see you guys when I'm done with all the sanding. Alright, so now the wet sanding is done. As you guys can tell, it looks a little bit better than what it did, still dull, but if there's water on it, you can still see a little bit of a glare. Over here is what it should look like. This is a side that just looked really well to begin with. But yeah, all the wet sanding is basically done now. After I was done wet sanding with everything, I wiped it down one more time with a sponge, then took the rag and just went through and wiped it all down. And now I am letting it dry. So this is the important part. You want it to let it dry all the way before you put compound on it, because compound will not work that well with if it's a wet surface or damp surface. So you just want to make sure that the gel coat is completely dry. So to do that, I wiped it down, and now we're going to let it sit for probably about 30 minutes or so, 45 minutes maybe, and just let it dry. After that is dried, we're going to continue on with the process. Now that everything's dry, we are going to go through with the Pro-Tec No Paint Moisturizer. We're going to be applying this with just a little buffing pad. Basically the idea of this is you just apply it on, you let it sit for like 30-45 minutes, maybe even an hour, and it absorbs into the gel coat. I would do this with regular buffing compound too, like a heavy cut compound. You can go ahead and do that. You can take the heavy cut compound, just apply it, lather it on there good, and then let it just sit. And after it's done sitting for that time, I will go through with what to do. But for now, I'm just going to get the new paint on, lather it on there, make sure every spot's covered, and then let it sit for 30 to 45 minutes. We are officially done with letting it sit. It's been sitting now for 45 minutes to an hour. So we're going to move on to the next step. So the next step, you're going to take whatever compound you use to let it sit on there. In my case, it's a new paint moisturizer from Pro-Tec. You're going to take that and you are going to put it on this, really it's called a wool buffing pad. I call it a cotton puffing pad because, you know, it feels like cotton. But you're going to put some on there just to moisten up the pad, and then you are going to go through and you're just going to buff the area that you just wiped down and let sit for that 30 to an hour time period. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to set my camera down right down here and put this on time lapse, and let's get to buffing. Alright, one thing I forgot to mention, when you're doing this, make sure your buffer does not go any faster than 3,000 RPM. If you go faster than this, you risk burning your gel coat, so just make sure you do not exceed 3,000 RPM with your buffer. For mine, I'm going about 2,000 to 2,500 RPM or so. So that's where we're at. Let's get it done. And after you're done with that step, you're going to grab a rag and wipe everything down to wipe off all the compound. Make sure this is a fairly clean rag too, and dry. That's one thing you do not want, is you do not want a dirty rag to do this. You don't want to put any type of bad, just junk into this gel coat, because it will not help the shine at all if you do. So, as you guys can see now, right there where there was a huge difference earlier between the really shiny and then the really dull, you can tell now there's really not much of a difference. That's what we're aiming for. This section of the boat is just right inside. I'm trying to get it good, but this part does not need to be perfect, just good enough so then it matches the rest of the boat. I've just spent so much time on the rest of the boat and the outside that this side I'm like, I'm going to get it to where it looks nice but not overdo it. So yeah, now I'm going to finish wiping down all of this, make sure it's all good and wiped down, and then you need to wash it. Wash it with soap that is not ammonia based. Dawn dish soap is ammonia based. You guys can probably use car soap. A lot of the car soaps are not ammonia based, but you just don't want to use ammonia because ammonia eats away at any type of wax, compound, anything like that, and you do not want this compound to come out. You want it to stay on there and keep the good polish onto it, because if you wipe it off, you're going to go back down to a dull finish. So I'm going to wipe this off, wash it down, and then same thing as we did earlier after we washed it, you're going to let it sit until it is completely dry. So next up, you're going to be taking some type of pad and whatever wax and sealant you want to use. This is the Pro-Tec Clear Coat Sealant Polish. So this will polish it out, and it'll also seal it off so you don't have to worry about sun fading it back again for a long time, as long as you take care of it. You're going to take this, you're going to wipe it down, same process as we did before, where you wipe it down, you let it sit, and you let it sit for about 30 to 45 minutes, and we're going to do that, and then I'll see you guys when I'm done with that. As we're back out here, yes, I don't have my hat on anymore. It is hot out. But we're back out here. We are going to finalize this process. I let mine sit here for 30 minutes to an hour, somewhere in between there, to really just kind of soak into the gel coat. You don't have to do that. I like it. I think it helps after doing the process multiple times on different parts of the boat. I really think it helps. So I recommend doing it. Afterwards, though, you can either go through with a fine, like a foam pad on a buffer at a really low RPM with your polish or sealant to go through and just hit it one more time with it all. If you aren't using this clear coat sealant polish from Pro-Tec. If you're using the Pro-Tec stuff, you're just going to go through with the rag again, just wipe it down, and then in another 24 hours, you will just put on that sealant one more time and then wipe it down again. I'm sure you guys can kind of see my gel coat rail up here and all the way down my side of my boat. I've done this process on it multiple times. I did it twice before I was happy with it. So basically that's what it'll end up coming out like if you actually take your time and do it. I will show again my gel coat on the side gunnels on the outside here in a minute. But first, let's hop into this, wipe this down, and see if it actually made a difference. It is completely done, other than one part of the sealant and polish being put on tomorrow. But anyways, it's done, so I'm going to show you guys it. This time, I'm going to shine a light on it since it's dim so you guys can actually see it sparkle. The first time, before I did anything to it, I could shine a light on it and it would not sparkle at all. Like, it was bad. It was really dirty. It felt like sandpaper, and it just didn't sparkle at all, no matter what. So I'm going to shine this light on it and kind of show you guys what this looks like now after I went through with the buffing and polishing steps. So there you guys go. You guys can see how it sparkles. Sorry for keep on hitting the camera. It's just not that bright in my garage, but as you guys can see, does that sparkle. And over here on the left hand side is what the original paint looked like, or gel coat looked like. So you can see it brought out some of that original color to it, some of those colored flakes. There may not quite be as many sparkles in the part that we just did. It may not be quite as sparkly, but you are restoring a gel coat. So it's not going to be perfect. It's not going to look like original. But anyways, I'm going to hop out of here. I'm going to show you guys the outside of my boat, what the gel coat looks like now after I restored it. I'll show you guys some pictures here in this part of the video. So yeah, let's cue the pictures of what my boat looked like before the gel coat was restored. So basically the gel coat before the boat was restored. The guy just neglected the boat. He bought it brand new. He never washed it really. He never polished it, buffed it, wet sanded it, or anything. So it was really neglected and just did not look good at all. I knew it was going to be a challenge getting it completely done, but it was something that I thought could be really worth it. So as you guys see, it's faded a lot. The black is almost grayish white because of how bad it's faded. There's really not much of a sparkle on any of the boat at all. So yeah, it was pretty bad when I got it. So after all the time of wet sanding and buffing and polishing on the boat, here is what it actually looks like now. So as you guys can see, the boat actually sparkles, has a glare to it, and it looks really good. Granted, I am inside. It looks fairly similar outside. There may be a little bit of haziness in it still, and the black only, because that black holds in heat a lot better than what the silver does, so the black oxidized easier. As you guys can probably see down here in the crease, there's still some white residue from where it was really bad. I couldn't quite get that out. I may eventually try with wet sanding to get that out, but it's so little that I'm really not really worried about it too much. So there we are. You guys can see it sparkle. And here's this other side that you guys saw too. That was really bad. So this side has a little bit better light on it, so you guys can kind of see it a little bit better. But yeah, I mean, as you guys can see, it's totally transformed. It looks really good compared to when I bought it. Still not where I'm extremely happy with it, but hopefully one of these days I'll be able to get it to where I'm extremely happy with it. Right now, I'm really finishing up the inside with that spot right there. The rest of the boat's not that bad on the inside. So I believe I can just wipe it down with that sealant and wax, or the polish and sealant, and go from there and really get it to look a little bit better. In between making this video, I was working on the console, and then after that's done, all I've got left is the trailer, because, you know, the trailer looks awful from sitting out in the sun. So anyways, hopefully you guys enjoyed today's video. Hopefully you learned a little bit about wet sanding and buffing and polishing, restoring gel coat on a boat, and hopefully this helped you guys. So anyways, thank you guys for watching. We will see you guys in the next episode.